Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's time for Krishna book. And this is Volume 2, Chapter 24. The liberation of Balvala and Lord Balaram's touring the sacred places. This is the summary study of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the ripened fruit of all Vedic knowledge, as translated and presented in a storybook form by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Lord Balaram prepared himself to meet the demon Balvala. At the time when the demon usually attacked the sacred place, there appeared a great hailstorm. The whole sky became covered with dust, and the atmosphere became surcharged with a filthy smell. Okay, just a little recap from the previous chapters. Lord Balaram found Ramaharshan Sutta to be not have a devotional attitude because he didn't respond properly or in the right devotional way to Lord Balaram. He didn't. When Lord Balaram entered the assembly at Naimisharanya, Ramaharshan Sutta had been elected to be to preside over the sacrifice that was being performed there, and he didn't even acknowledge the presence of Balaram when Balaram personally entered the assembly. And so Balaram found him to be puffed up about his prestige and his position, and he killed him with a blade of kusha grass. So those great saints and sages and realized souls who were present there at the assembly, they were worried that this would set a bad precedent for others, because whatever a great man does, others follow. And to kill a Brahmin, although he wasn't completely a Brahmin, his mother was a Brahmin, his father was a Kshatriya, but still, this kind of a killing that had taken place would set a really bad example for keeping the religious principles, high standard of religious principles within society. People would not understand. So Lord Balaram agreed, yes, I agree, I should do some atonement. So the atonement had, I believe, two parts. One was that he would kill this demon who would come regularly to disturb the sages at Naimisharanya, and that Lord Balaram would go on pilgrimage. So this is the first part of that atonement that Lord Balaram, he doesn't need to atone for anything, but to set the example so others might not misunderstand and try to imitate these things. So this is the demon. The demon is the demon Balvala. And it says that at the time when the demon usually attacked the sacred place, there appeared a great hailstorm, and the whole sky became covered with dust. The atmosphere became surcharged with a filthy smell. Just after this, the mischievous demon Balvala began to shower torrents of stool and urine and other impure substances on the arena of sacrifice. After this onslaught, the demon himself appeared with a great trident in his hand. He was a gigantic person, and his black body was like a huge mass of carbon. His hair, his beard, and his mustache appeared reddish like copper. And because of his great beard and mustache, his mouth appeared to be very dangerous and fierce. As soon as he saw the demon, Lord Balaram prepared to attack him. He first began to consider how he could smash the great demon to pieces. Lord Balaram called for his plow and club, and they immediately appeared before him. The demon Balvala was flying in the sky, and at the first opportunity Lord Balaram dragged him down with his plow and angrily smashed the demon's head with his club. By Balaram's striking, the forehead of the demon became fractured. There was a profuse flow of blood from his forehead, and he began to scream loudly. In this way, the demon, who had been such a great disturbance to the pious Brahmins, fell to the ground. His falling was like a great mountain with a red oxide peak being struck by a thunderbolt and smashed to the ground. The inhabitants of Naimisharanya, learned sages and Brahmins, became most pleased by seeing this, and they offered their respectful prayers to Lord Balaram. They offered their heartfelt blessings upon the Lord, and all agreed that Lord Balaram's attempt to do anything would never be a failure. The sages and Brahmins then performed a ceremonial bathing of Lord Balaram, just as King Indra is bathed by the demigods when he is victorious over the demons. The Brahmins and sages honored Lord Balaram by presenting him first-class new clothing and ornaments, and the lotus flower garland of victory, the reservoir of all beauty, which was never to be dried up, being an everlasting existence. After this incident, Lord Balaram took permission from the Brahmins assembled at Naimisharanya, and accompanied by other Brahmins, went to the bank of the river Kaushiki. After taking his bath in this holy place, he proceeded toward the river Sarayu and visited the source of the river. He began to travel on the bank of the Sarayu River, and he gradually reached Prayag, where there is a confluence of 3 rivers, the Ganges, the Yamuna, and the Saraswati. Here he also regularly took his bath, worshipped the local temples of God, and, as it is enjoined in the Vedic literatures, offered oblations to the forefathers and sages. He gradually reached the ashram of the sage Pulaha, and from there went to Gandhika on the river Gomati. After this he took his bath in the river Vipasa, and gradually he came to the bank of the Sona River. The Sona River is still running as one of the big rivers in the Bihar province. He also took his bath there and performed Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. He continued his travels and gradually came to the pilgrimage site of Gaya, where there's a celebrated Vishnu temple. According to the advice of his father Vasudeva, he offered oblations to the forefathers in this Vishnu temple. From here he traveled to the delta of the Ganges, where the sacred river Ganges mixes with the Bay of Bengal. This sacred place is called Gangasagara, and at the end of January every year there's still a great assembly of saintly persons and pious men, just as there is an assembly of saintly persons in Prayag every year, which is called the Magh Mela Fair. After finishing his bathing and ritualistic ceremonies at Gangasagara, Lord Balaram proceeded toward the mountain known as Mahendra Parvata. At this place he met Parashuram, the incarnation of Lord Krishna, and he offered him respect by bowing down before him. After this, he gradually turned towards southern India and visited the banks of the river Godavari. After taking his bath in the river Godavari and performing the necessary ritualistic ceremonies, he gradually visited the other rivers, the Vena, the Pampa, the Bhimarati. On the bank of the river Bhimarati, there is the deity called Swami Kartikeya. After visiting Kartikeya, Lord Balaram gradually proceeded to Sailapura, a pilgrimage city in the province of Maharashtra. Sailapura is one of the biggest districts in Maharashtra province. He then gradually proceeded towards the Dravida Desh. Southern India is divided into 5 parts called Panchadravida. Northern India is also divided into 5 parts called Panchagora. All the important acharyas of the modern age, namely Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Vishnu Swami, and Nimbarka, advent themselves in these Dravida provinces. Lord Chaitanya appeared in Bengal, which is part of the 5 Gaura Desh. The most important place of pilgrimage in southern India, or Dravida, is Venkatachala, commonly known as Balaji. After visiting this place, Lord Balaram proceeded toward Vishnu-Kanchi, and from there he proceeded on the river of Kaveri. He took his bath in the river Kaveri, and then he gradually reached Rangakshetra. The biggest temple in the world is in Rangakshetra, and the Vishnu deity there is celebrated as Ranganath. A similar temple of Ranganath is in Vrindavan, although not as big as the temple in Rangakshetra. While going to Vishnu-Kanchi, Lord Balaram also visited Shiva-Kanchi. After visiting Rangakshetra, he gradually proceeded toward Mathura, commonly known as the Mathura of southern India. After visiting this place, he gradually proceeded toward Setabandhu. Setabandhu is the place where Lord Ramachandra constructed the stone bridge from India to Lanka, or Ceylon. In this particular holy place, Lord Balaram distributed 10,000 cows to the local Brahmin priests. It is the Vedic custom that when a rich visitor goes to any place of pilgrimage, he gives in charity to the local priest gifts of houses, cows, ornaments, and garments. This system of visiting places of pilgrimage and providing the local Brahmin priests with all necessities of life has greatly deteriorated in this age of Kali. The richer section of the population, because of its degradation in Vedic culture, is no longer attracted by these places of pilgrimage, and the Brahmin priests who depended on such visitors have also deteriorated in their professional duty of helping the visitors. These Brahmin priests in the places of pilgrimage are called Panda or Pandit. This means that they formerly were very learned Brahmins and used to guide the visitors in all details of the purpose of coming there, and thus both the visitors and the priests were benefited by mutual cooperation. It's clear from the description of Srimad Bhagavatam that when Lord Balaram was visiting the different places of pilgrimage, he properly followed the Vedic system. After distributing cows at Setubandha, Lord Balaram proceeded toward the Kritamala and the Tamraparni rivers. These two rivers are celebrated as sacred, and Lord Balaram bathed in both. He then proceeded toward Malaya Hill. This Malaya Hill is very great, and it is said that it is one of 7 peaks called the Malaya Hills. The great sage Agastya used to live there, and Lord Balaram visited him and offered his respects by bowing down before him. After taking the sage's blessings, Lord Balaram, with the sage's permission, proceeded toward the Indian Ocean. At the point of the cape, there's a big temple of the goddess Durga, where she is known as Kanyakumari. This temple of Kanyakumari was also visited by Lord Ramachandra, and therefore it's to be understood that the temple has been existing for millions of years. From there, Lord Balaram went on to visit the pilgrimage city known as Palguna-tirtha, which is on the shore of the Indian Ocean, or the Southern Ocean. Palguna-tirtha is celebrated because Lord Vishnu, in his incarnation of Ananta, is lying there. From Palguna-tirtha, Lord Balaram went on to visit another pilgrimage spot known as Panchapsaras. There also he bathed according to regulative principles and observed the ritualistic ceremonies. This site is also celebrated as a shrine of Lord Vishnu. Therefore, Lord Balaram distributed 10,000 cows to the local Brahmin priests. From Cape Comorin, Lord Balaram turned toward Kerala. The country of Kerala is still existing in southern India under the name of South Kerala. After visiting this place, he came to Gokarna-tirtha, where Lord Shiva is constantly worshipped. Balaram then visited the temple of Arya-Devi, which is completely surrounded by water. From that island, he went on to a place known as Shriparaka. After this, he bathed in the rivers known as Tapi, Payoshni, and Nirvinja, and he came to the forest known as Dandakaranya. This is the same Dandakaranya forest where Lord Ramachandra lived while he was in exile. Lord Balaram next came to the bank of the river Narmada, the biggest river in central India. On the bank of this sacred Narmada is a pilgrimage spot known as Mahishmati Puri. After bathing there, according to regulative principles, Lord Balaram returned to Prabhasatirtha, wherefrom he had begun his journey. When Lord Balaram returned to Prabhasatirtha, he heard from the Brahmins that most of the Kshatriyas in the battle of Kurukshetra had been killed. Balaram felt relieved to hear that the burden of the world had been reduced. Lord Krishna and Balaram appeared on this earth to lessen the burden of military strength created by ambitious Kshatriya kings. This is the way of materialistic life. Not being satisfied by the absolute necessities of life, people ambitiously create extra demands, and their illegal desires are checked by the laws of nature or by the laws of God, appearing as famine, war, pestilence, and similar catastrophes. Lord Balaram heard that, although most of the Kshatriyas had been killed, the Kurus were still engaged in fighting. Therefore, he returned to the battlefield just on the day Bhimasena and Duryodhana were engaged in a personal duel. As a well-wisher of both of them, Lord Balaram wanted to stop them, but they would not stop. When Lord Balaram appeared on the scene, King Yudhisthira and his younger brothers Nakula and Sahadev, Lord Krishna and Arjuna, immediately offered him their respectful obeisances, but they did not speak at all. The reason they were silent was that Lord Balaram was somewhat affectionate toward Duryodhana, and Duryodhana had learned from Balaramaji the art of fighting with a club. Thus, when the fighting was going on, King Yudhisthira and others thought that Balaram might come there to say something in favor of Duryodhana, and they therefore remained silent. Both Duryodhana and Bhimasena were very enthusiastic in fighting with clubs, and in the midst of large audiences, each was skillfully trying to strike the other, and while attempting to do so, they appeared to be dancing. But although they appeared to be dancing, it was clear that both of them were very angry. Lord Balaram, wanting to stop the fighting, said, "My dear King Duryodhana and Bhimasena, I know that both of you are great fighters, and are well known in the world as great heroes, but still I think that Bhimasena is superior to Duryodhana in bodily strength. On the other hand, Duryodhana is superior in the art of fighting with a club. Taking this into consideration, my opinion is that neither of you is inferior to the other in fighting. Under the circumstances, there's very little chance of one of you being defeated by the other. Therefore, I request you not to waste your time in fighting in this way. I wish you to stop this unnecessary fight." The good instructions given by Lord Balaram to both Bhimasena and Duryodhana was intended for the equal benefit of both of them, but they were so enwrapped in anger against each other that they could only remember their long-lasting personal enmity. Each thought only of killing the other, and they did not give much importance to the instruction of Lord Balaram. Both of them then became like madmen in remembering the strong accusations and ill behavior they had exchanged with one another. Lord Balaram, being able to understand the destiny which was awaiting them, was not eager to go further in the matter. Therefore, instead of staying, he decided to return to the city of Dwarka. When he returned to Dwarka, he was received with great jubilation by relatives and friends, headed by King Ugrasen and other elderly persons. All of them came forward to welcome Lord Balaram. After this, he again went to the holy place of pilgrimage at Naimisharanya, and the sages, saintly persons, and Brahmins all received him standing. They understood that Lord Balaram, although a Kshatriya, was now retired from the fighting business. The Brahmins and sages, who were always for peace and tranquility, were very pleased at this. All of them embraced Balaram with great affection and induced him to perform various kinds of sacrifices in that sacred spot of Naimisharanya. Actually, Lord Balaram had no business performing the sacrifices recommended for ordinary human beings. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he himself is the enjoyer of all such sacrifices. As such, his exemplary action in performing Vedic sacrifices was only to give a lesson to the common man, to show how one should abide by the injunctions of the Vedas. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Balaram, instructed the sages and saintly persons at Namasharanya on the subject matter of the living entity's relationship with this cosmic manifestation, on how one should accept this whole universe and how one should relate with the cosmos in order to achieve the highest goal of perfection, the understanding that the whole cosmic manifestation is resting on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is also all-pervading, even within the minutest atom, by the function of his Paramatma feature. Lord Balaram then took the Avabrita bath, which is accepted after finishing sacrificial performances. After taking his bath, he dressed himself in new silken garments and decorated himself with beautiful jewelry amidst his relatives and friends. He appeared to be a shining moon amidst the luminaries in the sky. Lord Balaram is the personality of Ananta himself, therefore he is beyond the scope of understanding by mind, intelligence, or body. He descended exactly like a human being and behaved in that way for his own purpose. We can only explain his activities as the Lord's pastimes. No one can even estimate the extent of the unlimited demonstrations of his pastimes because he's all-powerful. Lord Balaram is the original Vishnu. Therefore, anyone remembering these pastimes of Lord Balaram in the morning and evening will certainly become a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus his life will become successful in all respects. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 2nd volume, 24th chapter of Krishna, the liberation of Balvala, and Lord Balaram's touring sacred places.